What if all the salt in the ocean vanished overnight? This question sounds almost pleasant at first. Imagine waking up, running down to the beach, and tasting the water. Finally, fresh. You could take a sip without gagging, and your picnic sandwiches would never again suffer the fate of salty spray. But, unfortunately, reality isn't so refreshing. If all the salt in the ocean disappeared overnight, Earth would instantly become a very different and very unfriendly place. First, let's remind ourselves just how much salt we're talking about. The oceans contain roughly 1.35 billion cubic kilometers of water, and on average, every liter of that water holds about 35 grams of dissolved salts, mostly sodium chloride. That means the oceans contain on the order of 50 quadrillion tons of salt. If you scooped it all out and spread it evenly across the planet, you'd cover Earth in a solid layer of salt nearly 500 feet thick. Congratulations! You've just invented the worst beach ever. Now suppose all that salt is gone. At first, the oceans would look normal. The waves would crash, the tides would roll, and seagulls would still try to steal your chips. But the chemistry of the water would have changed instantly, and everything living in it would notice. Marine creatures are built to handle salt water. Fish regulate the salt in their bodies through osmosis. Corals, mollusks, crustaceans, all of them rely on the delicate balance between salt and water pressure. With that balance suddenly destroyed, most marine life would begin dying almost immediately. Fish cells would start swelling with fresh water until they burst. Shell-building animals like clams and corals would find that the minerals they need to make their shells had vanished into thin air. By dawn, the oceans would already be littered with the consequences of your salt theft. But it wouldn't stop there. Ocean currents, the great conveyor belts that move heat around the planet, depend on differences in salinity and temperature. Remove the salt and you collapse the whole system. The Gulf Stream, which keeps northern Europe warm, would grind to a halt. The monsoons of Asia, which feed billions, would falter. Antarctica might start freezing harder than ever, while the tropics sweltered under stagnant, unmoving seas. Within months, global weather would be unrecognizable. Congratulations again, you've broken the climate. And then there's you. Humans are pretty fragile when it comes to electrolytes. Our bodies need salt to function. It controls nerve impulses, muscle contractions, and hydration. Now, technically, the salt vanishing from the oceans doesn't rip it out of your bloodstream, but the chain reaction it sets off will come for you eventually. Agriculture depends heavily on the sea. Fish are food, seaweed is food, well, even livestock depends on fish meal and ocean nutrients. Without the ocean's salty foundation, food chains everywhere start to collapse. You might survive the first week by eating potato chips from your local store. After that, things get dicey. Now let's get weird. Where did all that salt go? If it just vanished overnight, conservation of mass has been violated, which means either you've triggered a loophole in physics, or you've just opened a portal to another universe made entirely of salt. If it all reappeared in one spot on Earth's surface, you'd suddenly have a blinding white salt mountain taller than Everest. The weight of it would crush the crust, trigger earthquakes, and maybe even punch through into the mantle. Earth would gain a new landmark, the saltest mountain. Tourists wouldn't visit for long, though, because the atmosphere around it would be a choking cloud of chloride gas. But let's be charitable and assume the salt simply disappeared without a trace. Without salt, the freezing point of seawater rises. The oceans would freeze more easily, especially near the poles. Winters would spread farther south, ice sheets would grow, and sea levels might even rise as new ice caps expanded. Humanity would find itself in a colder, stormier, hungrier world. And yet, somewhere in the chaos, people would find ways to adapt. New species would eventually evolve for freshwater oceans. Maybe gigantic jellyfish would rise to dominance, pulsating silently through the brackish void. Humanity, meanwhile, would spend its days mining the ruins of old potato chip factories, desperately trying to remember the taste of French fries. So what if all the salt in the ocean vanished overnight? In short, marine life would collapse, the climate would fall apart, and humanity would be left staring at a very bland, very broken planet. You'd miss the ocean's saltiness more than you ever thought possible, because without it, Earth would taste like the end.